Have you ever wondered why some people command respect the moment they walk into a room, while others are ignored, no matter how loud they speak? The truth is brutal. The world doesn't respect good intentions. It respects those who master the game. And Machiavelli? He wrote the manual no one had the courage to hand you. This isn't a motivational video. It's a surgical cut through your illusions. Here, you'll learn why you keep losing arguments, opportunities, and even relationships, even though you're smart. You'll understand how silence can dominate louder than shouting, how to use conflict in your favor, and why being predictable makes you an easy target. Get ready. This will shake the way you think about leadership, respect, and influence. You're about to hear uncomfortable truths, but necessary ones. And if you watch to the end, you'll walk away with a brutal advantage, because once you understand the game of power, no one plays you again. So subscribe right now, turn on the bell, and don't go anywhere. Because in the next few minutes, you're entering an invisible war, where only those who see the full board actually win. The jungle instinct. Power is survival. In the jungle of life, the rules are raw and the ground is unstable. Machiavelli understood this long before anyone else. He didn't write for idealists. He wrote for those who wanted to survive and, more than that, to dominate. The idea that being good is enough to thrive is a charming trap. In the real world, where eyes watch silently and daggers hide behind smiles, self-mastery becomes armor. Being defenselessly kind is an open invitation to be devoured. Let's be clear, being virtuous isn't the problem. Being virtuous and naive is. Kindness without strategy becomes an easy offering on the altar of manipulation. When Machiavelli wrote The Prince, he wasn't asking you to be cruel, but to not be destroyed by those who are. It's like walking through a jungle of predators, thinking they're all rabbits. Doesn't work. In the game of power, innocence isn't a currency, it's bait. Many believe morality comes before survival, but they often don't live long enough to prove it. This applies to personal life, work, even family. How many times have you been fairy and lost? Exactly. Machiavelli invites us to flip the equation. Survive first, then build your values. Only those still standing can defend their ideals. Think of someone stuck in a toxic job, hoping their decency will get them promoted. Meanwhile, the flatterers and manipulators climb the ladder with smiles sharp as knives. Machiavellian philosophy isn't about copying that. It's about understanding the game. About realizing that morals without self-control are feathers in a storm. That's why self-mastery is essential. Before trying to change the world, you must command your instincts. Know when to speak, when to hold, when to strike, and when to retreat. That's real power. Wanting the throne isn't enough. You need to understand the jungle that surrounds it. Here, the smartest, not the strongest, survives. Here's a practical example. In the stock market, in politics, even in friendships, no one rewards pure-hearted emotion. If you don't set boundaries, you become an emotional pillow for others to lean on. Survival demands more than affection. It demands emotional intelligence and sharp perception. This is why Machiavelli isn't a manual of cruelty. He's a manual of defense. A silent shield against underestimation. And if you've ever felt taken advantage of just for being too nice, then maybe it's time to stop playing checkers in a chess world. And the more you understand this jungle instinct, the more you see beyond the surface. You begin to read the social theater, see the intentions behind words, the tells behind the smiles. And one day, you're no longer prey. You've become a quiet predator, and everything changes. But even predators fall if they become predictable. And that's the next lesson. Never be predictable. Surprise is a weapon. The mistake of those who live in a straight line is believing the world works the same way. Machiavelli knew predictability is a death sentence dressed as security. On the board of power, those who repeat, their moves too often become decorative pieces, and still pieces are always the first to fall. Strategy begins where routine ends. Surprise is like breathing in the game of power. Either you master it, or you drown in the obvious. Some think consistency is the highest virtue, and it might be, if you were a machine. But humans observe, react, test. If you always respond the same way to attacks, they'll know exactly where to strike. Power demands movement, unpredictability, and above all, demands that no one can guess your next step. Unpredictability disarms, not just because it confuses people, but because it forces them to move in the dark. That buys you time, leverage, control. Ever noticed how someone who used to answer messages instantly suddenly goes silent for days? That absence of a pattern creates tension. Strategic instability is a form of silent influence. Here's something practical. In negotiations, throw in a surprising offer, even if you won't accept it later. The shock alone gives you the upper hand. In leadership, vary your posture. Be warm one day, firm the next. This prevents others from figuring you out and strengthens your presence. Self-mastery is the ability to shift gears without losing direction. And online, people who post the same content, same tone, same format, become noise. Drop a different video, go silent. Say something completely off script. It sparks curiosity and stretches attention. That's how you beat people's mental algorithms, by not giving them what they expect, but what makes them lean in. Take a look at history. Great leaders mastered the art of surprise. Mandela, Churchill, Steve Jobs. No one could predict their next move. That gave them a rare type of power, the power of expectation. And when expectation is your ally, even silence speaks loudly. But don't confuse unpredictability with chaos. It's not about being erratic. It's about being strategically versatile. It's like water adapting to the shape of the cup without losing its essence. Be that water. Adapt without being understood completely. And the best part? When you become unpredictable, people respect you more and even fear you a little. Because no one feels safe around someone they can't read. That discomfort gives you room to move. That is real influence. Use useful enemies. Controlled conflict builds authority. There's a kind of wisdom that only reveals itself through confrontation. Machiavelli understood this deeply. Sometimes an enemy, carefully chosen, is more valuable than a friend. A well-placed adversary acts like a spotlight on your leadership. Authority thrives in contrast. And in the game of power, visibility is currency, and conflict is a tool. Have you noticed how some leaders grow stronger the more they're attacked? That's no accident. It's strategy. A good enemy becomes a stepping stone, a mirror, a shield. When someone publicly challenges you, you get the chance to show strength. And more than that, you unite undecided allies around you. It's the classic us versus them tactic. A modern example? Politicians often choose a public rival to use as a symbol of everything they oppose. Every insult becomes marketing. Every attack becomes a stage. Machiavelli taught, if you don't have an enemy, create one, because humans crave narratives, and every powerful story needs an antagonist. But let's be clear, this isn't about picking fights for fun. It's about controlled conflict. Choose your enemies wisely. If they're too weak, they diminish you. Too strong, they might crush you. The secret is to select someone that challenges you just enough to highlight your value. Someone you can defeat on your terms. That's how you position, project, and promote yourself. And this applies to your personal life too. Sometimes, maintaining a bit of friction with someone can help you reinforce your boundaries. You don't have to be liked by everyone, and trying to please everybody is the fastest way to lose respect. Machiavelli said, "The hatred of a few can be more valuable than the love of the many." Harsh, maybe, but powerfully accurate. When you master conflict as a tool, you also master the narrative. What looks like a fight is actually a stage. And on that stage, you move with self-mastery, with cold precision, with purpose. You're not reacting, you're directing. That's how you stop being a piece and become the one moving the board. Here's the twist. Sometimes your greatest ally is the one you once saw as an enemy. Many leaders were forged through opposition. Clashes provoke growth. Tension reveals weakness. Adversaries refine your strategy. Conflict, when wielded well, is a source of real development. Just don't take it personally. Those who get offended lose clarity. Those who dramatize lose control. Conflict isn't about chaos. It's about leverage. Leadership isn't about avoiding opposition. It's about using it with wisdom. And speaking of wisdom, the next level of control lies in a place most people fear: their own emotions. The value of coldness. Emotion is exposed. Weakness. In a world where everyone reacts emotionally, keeping a straight face is a form of power. Machiavelli saw this clearly. Open emotion is a wide open window into your mind. And if others can read your mind, they can manipulate you. In the game of power, coldness isn't the absence of feeling. It's total control over it. It's feeling everything and showing nothing. Think about it. How many times has someone pushed your buttons just to throw you off and succeeded? Because when they break your temper, they break your influence. The moment you react, you hand over your power. That's why self-mastery isn't optional. It's survival. Those who lose control lose the game. But let's clear something up. Being cold doesn't mean being numb. It means being in charge. While everyone's shouting, you're observing. While they're panicking, you're calculating. It's the difference between a player on the field chasing the ball and the coach who sees the whole match from above. Emotion is beautiful, but in power, excess emotion is a liability. Here's something real. A leader who explodes in anger might seem passionate, but loses respect. Meanwhile, the one who speaks softly, breathes deeply, and stays calm in chaos, that person owns the room, and often inspires fear. Because silence under pressure is far more intimidating than a loud meltdown. This applies online too. Reacting to haters with rage only feeds them. But replying with silence or a calm, clever line, that flips the dynamic. In a digital world full of emotional outbursts, a cold, composed presence stands out like a king among clowns. Influence starts where emotion ends. This is where emotional intelligence comes in. Knowing when to smile, when to pause, when to say nothing. Emotion, when used strategically, is a blade. But when it controls you, it becomes a leash. And in this game, either you wield it or you're chained by it. A practical step: train your expression. Watch speeches by people like Putin, Angela Merkel, or Barack Obama. Notice how they speak: calm, calculated, compelling. Coldness doesn't repel, it imposes, and you can practice this. Pause before replying, observe before reacting, breathe before judging. And if you're burning inside, that's okay. The goal isn't to stop feeling, it's to stop leaking. Anger can be a motor if you drive it. Fear can be a signal if it doesn't steer you. Coldness is about using emotion like a weapon, not letting it use you. Now, if mastering your emotions puts you ahead, imagine what happens when you learn to master something even greater. Time itself, the art of waiting. Time is an invisible player in a world addicted to speed. Knowing how to wait has become a superpower. Machiavelli saw time not as an enemy to outrun, but as an invisible ally. While others rush, the silent strategist lets things ripen. The art of waiting isn't laziness, it's control in its purest form. In the game of power, impatience is often self-destruction. Look around. How many decisions are made in the heat of the moment, only to end in regret? Time reveals intentions, exposes weaknesses, strips away masks. An impatient opponent gives away everything: fears, flaws, hidden desires. Waiting becomes a quiet form of attack. You don't need to move, but just let them wear themselves out. And here's the twist: sometimes the best move is no move. A well-timed silence can suffocate more than 100 words. A calculated absence can hit harder than any presence. Machiavelli knew. Some victories are born from stillness. The secret is to use time as a shield, not a prison. Need something practical? Think of seasoned investors. They wait for the right moment to act. They're not ruled by market noise. Same in personal life. Sometimes the best response to a provocation is none. Let the other drown in their own anxiety while you observe. That's power, that's self-mastery. And in the digital world, people who reply too fast, post too much, always explain themselves, lose aura. Waiting creates expectation, and expectation creates influence. Want more engagement? Post less, say less, deliver better, make them feel your absence. Time used well is magnetic, but waiting doesn't mean procrastinating. It means observing like an eagle, positioning like a sniper. And when the time comes, acting with precision. It's the difference between a prey that flinches and a hunter that waits. In the game of power, you don't want to be prey. Politics is a great example. Rushed alliances collapse, but those who wait for the right moment, when an ally is desperate or an enemy isolated, strike with maximum impact. Timing isn't decoration, it's the weapon of the wise. And time, only, reveals its secrets to those who wait. So train your inner clock. Not everything must be said now. Not every plan must unfold today. Start small. Wait one day before replying to that impulsive message. Wait a week before making that emotional decision. Wait until the other fully reveals themselves. Then move. And if mastering time gives you an edge, imagine what happens when you start collecting what others ignore, information. Because those who know what no one else knows rule without having to raise their voice. Gather information. Power loves the invisible. Machiavelli understood better than most that true power doesn't shout, it whispers. It hides in the background, in the unnoticed details. And if there's a currency more valuable than gold in the game of power, it's information. Those who observe silently, who hear what others ignore, gain an enormous advantage. Influence is born behind the curtain, not on the stage. While most people talk too much, expose too much, and give away their plans like candy, the real strategist listens, asks, watches. Power lies in knowing what the other person doesn't realize you know. And that turns any interaction into a quiet battlefield of control. Think about it. Have you ever noticed how certain coworkers always seem to predict what's coming? They don't have a crystal ball, just sharp eyes and trained ears. They pick up on tone, timing, silence. Every detail is a clue, and every clue is a strategic advantage. This is how self-mastery becomes dominion over others too. So here's how to apply it. Read beyond words, study behavior, notice patterns. Dive into books like The Art of War or The 48 Laws of Power. Study body language. Learn to doubt what seems too obvious. Machiavelli would say, "The wise man acts with dissimulation." In other words, don't show your cards. This works everywhere. At work, in relationships, in negotiations. Information is both shield and sword. When you know what others fear, desire, or pretend not to want, your moves become lethal. The crowd doesn't care for nuance, but you must. You don't need to speak louder. You need to know deeper. And in the digital age, where everyone is screaming for attention, those who listen stand out. Analyze comments, watch behavior, understand what your audience truly wants, not just what they click. That kind of strategic intelligence separates noise from legacy. But don't twist this. It's not about spying. It's about awareness. Start with simple habits. When someone speaks, listen more than you talk. When entering a new group, observe before acting. When starting a project, research before planning. Knowledge doesn't take space, right? It takes power. Here's the beauty. The more you know, the less you have to act. A glance, a pause, a subtle remark, all become powerful when backed by invisible knowledge. You start playing with cards no one else sees. And because of that, no one can predict your next move. And once you've mastered this quiet intelligence, you're ready for something louder, something legendary. Because now, it's time to build your symbol. The one thing that speaks louder than your words. Create symbolism. Power strengthens through mythology. Machiavelli understood that reality is shaped by perception. And in the game of power, what you represent is often more important than what you are. The most powerful leaders don't just lead, They symbolize something. A symbol is a silent weapon, a psychological totem that sparks respect, loyalty, or even fear. And here's the truth. Many of those who rule the world started by mastering their image. Think of the names etched into history: Napoleon, Che Guevara, Mandela, Elon Musk. They all built mythologies around themselves. It's not enough to be smart. You must look inevitable. It's not enough to be strong. You must symbolize strength. Self-mastery includes mastering what others see. And that, my friend, is no accident. It's strategy. A practical example? Think about how you present yourself to the world. Your tone, your look, your online presence, it all speaks. If you're not directing that message, someone else will. A great read on this is the 48 Laws of Power, especially the law on reputation. If you're not shaping your symbol, you're leaving power on the table. Brands know this by heart. Apple doesn't sell tech, it sells innovation and identity. Nike doesn't sell sneakers, it sells triumph. You need your own personal symbol. It could be a phrase, a habit, a style, a presence, something that sets you apart, something that radiates power without having to say a word. And in leadership, a regular boss gives orders, a symbolic leader gives presence. They walk into a room and the energy shifts. That's not magic. It's storytelling, a consistent narrative, carefully crafted values, repeated behavior. That's pure Machiavellian philosophy. A strong symbol strengthens the throne. Symbols also protect. When you represent something greater than yourself, attacks don't hit you directly. They hit what you stand for. And people hesitate before attacking a belief. They respect it. They step back. They censor themselves. Because messing with a symbol means messing with meaning. But be warned, a weak or fake symbol becomes a joke. A shallow image won't hold. That's why your symbol must align with action. You can look mysterious but be sharp. Look stern but act with purpose. A symbol without substance fades. A symbol backed by truth becomes legend. So start today. What do you want to be known for? How do you want to be remembered? What is the symbol that will carry your leadership? Because when you create your personal mythology, you don't just lead people, you shape belief. And once you've mastered your image, it's time to learn how to command the weakest pieces on the board, the ones everyone else overlooks. Dominate the weak. They are the pieces on the board. Not all power comes from strength. Sometimes true power lies in knowing how to use the weak around you as strategic pieces. Machiavelli had no romantic illusions about human nature. He understood that most people don't want to think, choose, or lead. And that's exactly why the masses uphold every throne. Dominating the weak isn't cruelty. It's understanding how the game works. The weak aren't useless. On the contrary, they're essential. They amplify your image, spread your message, elevate your status. But to do that, you need to know how to influence them. This is where manipulation comes in, not as evil, but as a tension architecture. If you know how to guide the fragile, you don't need to fight the strong. Look at every great empire in history. They were built on the backs of loyal, passive masses. And what drives the masses? Fear, hope, and belonging. You don't need to impress everyone intellectually. You just need to provide direction. The weak don't want depth. They want clarity. Be that clarity. A practical example. A smart influencer simplifies the message, creates a catchphrase, and repeats it until it sticks. Why? Because the average person doesn't absorb complexity, but they follow consistency. That's strategy. That's self-mastery. If you don't understand how the many think, you'll be overrun by them. But don't confuse this with seeking advice from the weak. Never do that. Use them as a compass, a gauge, a force multiplier, but not as counselors. Machiavelli knew collective ignorance, when idolized, becomes a trap. Leadership means seeing from above. If you blend in too much, you lose perspective. The weak need a leader, not a peer. There's more. Sometimes protecting the weak, when convenient, creates loyalty. And blind loyalty is one of the most dangerous assets in the world. Use that wisely and sparingly to Don't confuse strategic empathy with emotional naivety. There's a line, and crossing it weakens your position. Here's a tip. Speak to different levels of minds. Have a deep message for the awakened, and a symbolic, simplified version for the distracted. That way you reach everyone but rule with precision. Dominating the weak is about using their numbers without sacrificing your direction. And if you still feel the need to please everyone, you're leaking power. The weak admire firm leadership, not desperate likability. Power requires emotional distance. Get too close, and you lose the mystique. A touch of mystery commands respect. But once you learn to use the weak as leverage, the real weight begins. Because every leader must eventually face the hardest part of power, making the decisions no one else dares to make. The weight of decision. Power demands a price in the game of power. Not deciding is in itself a decision, and usually the worst one. Machiavelli warned, avoiding the cut feeds weakness. Real leadership isn't born from elegant speeches, but from hard choices. Trying to please everyone only ensures one thing. You'll lose everyone's respect. Power requires a firm hand, and that comes at an emotional cost few are willing to pay. Every real decision involves loss. To choose is to cut, to sacrifice, to walk away from 1,000 possibilities. And here's the truth, those who can't give up something lose everything. Self-mastery requires the strength to choose and the clarity to carry the weight that comes with it, without collapsing. Think about it. An entrepreneur who avoids firing an underperforming employee for emotional reasons will eventually sink the entire team. Hesitation destroys more than a wrong decision, because when direction disappears, chaos takes over, and chaos, without a commander, becomes destruction. Even a cold tyrant earns more respect than a friendly coward. Same goes for your personal life. Holding on to a dead relationship out of guilt, it drains your energy, your time, your focus. Leading your life also means cutting what weakens you. And yes, it's painful. But as Churchill said, the price of greatness is responsibility, and decision is the first act of true responsibility. Every decision defines you. It puts you in a position where you can't remain neutral. And that's a good thing. Neutrality may feel safe, but it's never respected. True leaders don't fear offending. They fear becoming irrelevant. Chronic doubt is the silent poison of potential. Here's a tip. When facing a hard decision, ask yourself, which choice reinforces my vision and leadership? Then act fast. Decisions that linger invite fear, and fear does not belong in a leader. Machiavelli taught, it's better to err by deciding than to disappear by hesitating. Start small. Pick a restaurant without second guessing. Choose your next book without delay. Initiate difficult conversations instead of avoiding them. The more you practice choosing under pressure, the stronger you become, and the more prepared you'll be for critical decisions. That's real development, personal and strategic. In the end, remember this. Decision makes you stronger, even when it hurts. It's through cutting that authority is forged. And anyone who leads must accept loss, followers, friends, comfort. But maintaining respect and coherence is worth far more than universal approval. Decisions shape character, and character shapes legacy. But even those who master the art of decision must know when to stop. Because pushing forward endlessly isn't strength, it's pride disguised as power. And true power often lies in leaving before the fall. Leave before the fall. Strategic withdrawal is also victory. Most people think power is about never backing down. But Machiavelli reminds us, knowing when to leave is just as powerful as knowing when to strike. There's a kind of silent victory that only comes through retreat. Pride teaches us to insist, but wisdom teaches us to calculate. Staying where there's nothing left to gain is vanity dressed as courage. And in the game of power, vanity is weakness. Many leaders fall because they confuse resistance with persistence. But there's a moment where staying becomes the mistake. The true strategist sees when the game is already won or lost, and chooses to exit while still on top. Self-mastery here is silencing the ego before it makes noise. You've seen it happen. Businesses that crash because the owners couldn't pivot, relationships that turn into prisons because of fear, projects that become burdens because, too much has already been invested. But time, energy, and respect are lost faster when the game is over, and the player refuses to admit it. Withdrawal in these cases is nobler than the fight. And make no mistake, leaving doesn't mean quitting. It means repositioning. It's knowing the current battlefield offers no more progress, and having the clarity to move on. Machiavelli would say a well-timed exit is a masterstroke, because a king who leaves the stage with purpose might return as an emperor. Want an example? Think of CEOs who step down at their peak, preserving their legacy and opening new doors. They don't wait for the fall. They choose the moment. And for that, they're remembered as visionaries. You can do the same. Closing a chapter at the right time isn't weakness, it's brilliance. The same applies to friendships, social media, ideas, even conversations. Knowing when to stop speaking is just as powerful as knowing what to say. Those who drag on lose impact. Those who end on time leave presence. And presence that lingers becomes legacy. Ask yourself, why are we so afraid to exit? Because of ego. Because of attachment. Because of the illusion of control. But real control doesn't mean forcing the game. It means reading the board. Sometimes the most powerful move is pulling back, studying the new map, and preparing your next move in silence. And when you exit with clarity, you carry something few possess, the authority of someone who doesn't need to prove anything. That kind of authority doesn't scream, beg, or defend. It simply decides. And those who choose their own exit are always ready for their next conquest. Now that you've mastered the art of standing firm and the power of leaving, it's time to realize what all of this really means. Because what you've just heard isn't just a strategy, it's the hidden manual of real power. Now that you've uncovered the hidden gears behind the game of power, the real question is, will you keep being a piece, or will you become the player? Because listening to all this means nothing if you keep living like you never heard it. How many times were you ignored for being too predictable? How many doors closed because you hesitated to decide? How often were you used simply because you didn't understand the value of coldness, silence, or strategic retreat? The truth is, you've already paid the price for not knowing the rules. But now, you can't pretend you don't. Apply what you've learned. Rewatch this video if needed. Use each principle with intention and accuracy. Because power isn't luck, it's deliberate construction. And tell me in the comments, which of Machiavelli's laws have you used or plan to use now? Share your thoughts, your questions, even your doubts. This channel is for those who think differently. And if you want more content like this, deep, raw, and transformative, subscribe now and turn on notifications. Oh, and don't leave just yet. Your next step is right here. Be feared, not ignored. The silent path to respect. This companion video will show you how to earn respect without begging for attention.